Okay, praise God. EC Street Preacher here. I'm here with EC Rebecca and EC Joanna, and we're doing like I guess kind of a fun day. I'm taping this. We're doing Bible time, and we actually do this a few times every week. Try to do as much as I can, and I encourage you to do this. Especially if you have small children, is to take some time out and to read the Bible. And this is something that I've been doing for a while, and I'll just read a chapter to them, and we'll discuss it a little bit afterwards. And one thing I remind them is to be reverent when you're reading the Bible. I don't let them play around and jump around, all that kind of stuff. I let them eat. You got to eat, all right? So I'll let them do that, but you really need to be reverent of the Word. And I'm reading out of the NIV. And I know a lot of you are going crazy right now. Why are you reading out of the NIV? And I will agree with you. When people say that the NIV is the non-inspired version, they are absolutely correct. There are more errors in the NIV than a Pittsburgh Pirates baseball season. The NIV is more corrupt than the Lexington Police Force. I wish I could say that right. But anyway, I'll agree with you on that. One of the few things I like about the NIV is that it's a little more understandable, so it's easier for the kids to understand it. And if there are any errors, I can correct them. And I've had to do that on more than one occasion where they've translated it wrong, and I've actually told them the correct translation. And as to my own personal life, I love the King James Version. I read the King James Version. I preach from the King James Version. King James Version has errors. Every translation has errors. NIV has probably the most, from what I've seen. Well, maybe that one that J-Dubs do probably has more. But anyway, so that's the only reason why I use the NIV. I will encourage them, later in life when they have a little bit more understanding to read the King James, and there's other translations out there. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to read from Judges chapter 6, and this is about Gideon. So let's read about Gideon. The Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and for 7 years he gave them into the hands of the Midianites. Because the power of Midian was so oppressive, the Israelites prepared shelters for themselves in mountain clefts, caves, and strongholds. Whenever the Israelites planted their crops, the Midianites, Amalekites, and other eastern peoples invaded the country. They camped on the land and ruined the crops all the way to Gaza, and did not spare a living thing for Israel, neither sheep, nor cattle, nor donkeys. They came up with their livestock and their tents like swarms of locusts. It was impossible to count them, or their camels. They invaded the land to ravage it. Midian was so impoverished the Israelites, that they cried out to the Lord for help. When the Israelites cried out to the Lord because of Midian, he sent them a prophet who said, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I brought you up out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. I rescued you from the hand of the Egyptians, and I delivered you from the hand of all your oppressors. I drove them out before you and gave you their land. I said to you, I am the Lord your God. Do not worship the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you live, but you have not listened to me." The angel of the Lord came and sat down under the oak in Ophrah that belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, where his son Gideon was threshing wheat in a winepress to keep it from the Midianites. When the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." "Pardon me, my Lord," Gideon replied, "but if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all his wonders that our ancestors told us about when they said, 'Did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt?' But now the Lord has abandoned us and given us into the hand of Midian." The Lord turned to him and said, "Go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you?" "Pardon me, my Lord," Gideon replied, "but how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." The Lord answered, I will be with you, and you will strike down all the Midianites, leaving none alive. Gideon replied, if now I have found favor in your eyes, give me a sign that it is really you talking to me. Please do not go away until I come back and bring my offering and set it before you. And the Lord said, I will wait until you return. Gideon went inside, prepared a young goat, and from an ephah of flour he made bread without yeast. Putting the meat in a basket and its broth in a pot, he brought them out and offered them to him under the oak. The angel of God said to him, take the meat and the unleavened bread, place them on this rock, and pour out the broth. And Gideon did so. Then the angel of the Lord touched the meat and the unleavened bread with the tip of the staff that was in his hand. Fire flared from the rock, consuming the meat and the bread. And the angel of the Lord disappeared. When Gideon realized that it was the angel of the Lord, he exclaimed, Alas, sovereign Lord, I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face. But the Lord said to him, Peace, do not be afraid, you are not going to die. So Gideon built an altar to the Lord there and called it, The Lord is Peace. To this day it stands in Ophrah of the Abiezrites. That same night the Lord said to him, Take the second bull from your father's herd, the one 7 years old, tear down your father's altar to Baal, and cut down the Asherah pole beside it. Then build a proper kind of altar to the Lord your God on the top of this height. Using the wood of the Asherah pole that you cut down, offered a second bull as a burnt offering. So Gideon took 10 of his servants and did as the Lord told him, but because he was afraid of his family and the townspeople, he did it at night rather than in the daytime. In the morning, when the people of the town got up, there was Baal's altar demolished with the Asherah pole beside it, cut down, and the second bull sacrificed on the newly built altar. What are you doing? They asked each other, Who did this? When they carefully investigated it, they were told, Gideon, son of Joash, did it. The people of the town demanded of Joash, Bring out your son, he must die, because he has broken down Baal's altar and cut down the Asherah pole beside it. But Joash replied to the hostile crowd around him, Are you going to plead Baal's cause? Are you trying to save him? Whoever fights for him shall be put to death by morning. If Baal really is a god, he can defend himself when someone breaks down his altar. So because Gideon broke down Baal's altar, they gave him the name Jerubbaal. That name saying, let Baal contend with him. Now all the Midianites, Amalekites, and other eastern peoples joined forces and crossed over the Jordan and camped in the valley of Jezreel. Then the Spirit of the Lord came on Gideon, and he blew a trumpet, summoning the Abiezrites to follow him. He sent his messengers throughout Manasseh, calling them to arms. And also into Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali, so that they too went up to meet them. Gideon said to God, If you will save Israel by my hand as you have promised, look, I will place a wool fleece on the threshing floor. If there is only dew on the fleece and all the ground is dry, then I will know that you will save Israel by my hand as you said. And that is what happened. Gideon rose early the next day, he squeezed the fleece and wrung out the dew, a bowl full of water. And then Gideon said to God, Do not be angry with me. Let me make just one more request. Allow me one more test with the fleece. But this time make the fleece dry and let the ground be covered with dew. That night God did so. Only the fleece was dry. All the ground was covered with dew. A lot of people talk about this. You know, if you're looking for a decision from God, or you feel God's telling you to do something, they tell you, well, you need to put out a fleece, which is you want God to give some kind of outward sign that you feel like He's telling you to do something. But see, Gideon was just a normal Israelite, and back then the Spirit of God was only on priests, prophets, and kings. So, and this is before there were any kings. So just on priests and prophets. But we're in the new covenant now. So we don't need that. We have the Holy Spirit. We have the Holy Spirit when we get saved. So we don't need to put out fleeces. In fact, that's putting God to the test, which is actually wrong. But you see how God took Gideon, who was the least of his family, he was the youngest, And his family was not a very strong family. But God rose him up to, to defeat, the oppressors of Israel. So you see, even though you might be small, God can still do great things with you. Correct? Right? Hasn't God used you already? In some ways? Yeah. Okay, well, I hope y'all have, learned from this, and I do encourage you to, spend time reading your Bible with your children, and talking about it a little bit afterwards. So, this is EC Street Preacher with EC Rebecca and EC Joanna, and we'll sign out for now.